The scent of dyed wool hit Marcus Harding before he saw the girl. And when he finally did see her standing in the doorway of that weaving shed on the edge of Lordsburg, New Mexico, he swore under his breath because she had thread tangled in her dark hair like she had been wrestling with her loom instead of working it. It was 1878, and Marcus had spent the last 8 years in the mountains trapping beaver and living like a ghost. But now he stood frozen in the dusty street, watching this girl shake her head in frustration, sending more bits of colored thread floating around her like strange snow. The mountain man had come down to Lordsburg to trade his pelts and resupply before heading back into the Mogollon Mountains. But something about the way the afternoon light caught those threads in her hair made him forget about ammunition and flour. She was young, maybe 20 or so, with strong hands that spoke of hard work and a face that held determination, even as she cursed softly at the tangled mess she had made of herself. "You need help with that," Marcus heard himself say, his voice rougher than he intended after months of speaking only to his mule. The girl jumped, spinning around to face him. Her eyes were the color of wild honey, and they widened as she took in his appearance. Marcus knew what he looked like after all those years in the wilderness. He stood well over 6 feet tall, his shoulders broad enough to fill a doorway, his arms thick with muscle from hauling traps and skinning animals. His dark hair hung past his shoulders, and his beard needed trimming, but beneath all that wilderness, he was only 26 years old, though most people guessed older. "I have been working since dawn and my fingers will not cooperate anymore," she said, her voice carrying a slight accent he could not quite place. "This thread has decided to rebel against me." Marcus found himself walking toward her without deciding to move. Up close, he could see that the threads in her hair were beautiful colors, deep blues and bright reds and soft yellows that must have come from natural dyes. She smelled like sage and wool, and something sweet he could not identify. "May I?" he asked, gesturing to her hair. She hesitated, then nodded. "My name is Amelia Lawson. My father owns the weaving business here in town, Marcus Harding. I trap in the mountains." "I can tell," she said, and there was amusement in her voice but not cruelty. His large, calloused fingers worked surprisingly gently through her hair, untangling the threads without pulling. He had nimble fingers from years of setting delicate traps, and he found the work soothing. This close to her, he could see the tiredness in her face, the small cuts on her fingers from the loom, the way her shoulders sagged with exhaustion. "How long have you been weaving today?" he asked. "Since before sunrise." "We have a large order due to the fort, and my father is sick, so I have been working alone." She sighed. "I love weaving, truly I do, but some days it feels like the thread conspires against me." "There," Marcus said, pulling the last piece of blue thread from her hair. He held it up between them, and it caught the light like a tiny river. "You are free." Amelia laughed, and the sound made something in his chest tighten. "Thank you, Mr. Harding, that was very kind." "Marcus," he corrected. "Just Marcus. Then you must call me Amelia." She looked at him with those honey-colored eyes, and he saw curiosity there. What brings a mountain man down from the hills? Supplies, trading. He found himself not wanting to leave. "Is your father very sick?" Her face clouded. "The doctor says it is his lungs." "The dye fumes, perhaps, after so many years. He cannot work without coughing fits." Marcus should have walked away then. He should have gone to the trading post, conducted his business, and headed back into the mountains where life was simple and solitary. Instead, he heard himself say, "I could help. With the heavy work, at least. I am strong and I have some time before I need to head back." Amelia stared at him. "You would do that, but you do not even know us. I know you have thread in your hair and determination in your eyes." and I know your hands are bleeding from working too hard." He shrugged his massive shoulders. "I am not good with a loom, but I can haul water and move bolts of fabric and whatever else needs muscle." She bit her lip, considering. Then she smiled, and it was like the sun coming out from behind clouds. "My father would be grateful. I would be grateful. We can pay you, though not much, until the order is complete." "I do not need payment." "Then you will take meals with us," she said firmly. "I insist." "You cannot work for nothing." That was how Marcus Harding found himself staying in Lordsburg longer than he had planned. He set up camp on the edge of town, near the weaving shed, and every morning he came to help Amelia with her work. Her father, William Lawson, was a thin man in his 50s who indeed coughed terribly whenever he tried to work with the dyes. He watched Marcus with suspicious eyes at first, but gradually warmed to him as the days passed, and the mountain man proved himself reliable and respectful. Marcus learned that Amelia had come from England 5 years ago with her father after her mother died. They had settled in Lordsburg because William had heard there was opportunity in weaving, supplying the military forts and the growing towns. Amelia had learned the craft from her mother back in England, and she had her mother's gift for color and pattern. She could weave stories into cloth, Amelia told Marcus one afternoon as they worked together in the shed. She was at the loom, her fingers flying through the threads, while Marcus prepared more yarn for her. "My mother, I mean. People would commission pieces from her for weddings and christenings, and each one told a story if you knew how to read it." "Can you do that?" Marcus asked. He was fascinated watching her work, the way her whole body moved with the loom, the concentration on her face. "I try," she said softly. "I weave my hopes into the cloth, my dreams, sometimes my fears too, though I try not to. What are you weaving now?" She glanced at him, then back at the loom. "Mountains, sky, freedom." A pause. "Perhaps I am weaving you into it without meaning to." Marcus felt heat rise in his face. Over the past 2 weeks, he had found himself thinking about Amelia constantly. The way she laughed when thread tangled in her hair again. The fierce intelligence in her eyes when she solved a problem with a pattern. The gentleness in her hands when she cared for her father. She was nothing like the rough women he occasionally encountered in mountain towns, and nothing like the fancy ladies he had known briefly in Santa Fe. She was entirely herself, and he found that irresistible. "I would be honored to be woven into anything you make," he said quietly. She stopped working and turned to look at him fully. "Why are you really here, Marcus? You could be in the mountains doing what you love. Why are you spending your days in a hot shed helping strangers?" He set down the yarn he was holding and moved closer to her loom. "At first I told myself it was just kindness, helping someone in need." He met her eyes. "But that is not true anymore. I am here because when I look at you, I see something I did not know I was missing. You weave beauty into cloth, Amelia, but you have somehow woven beauty into my life too." She stood up from the loom, and he realized she was trembling slightly. "Marcus, I barely know you. Then let me stay longer. Let me help you finish this order. Let us know each other better." He wanted to reach for her but held himself back. "Unless you want me to go." "If you want that, I will leave in the morning." "No," she said quickly. Then, softer. "No, please do not go. I find myself looking for you each morning. I have been weaving you into my cloth, but I think you have been weaving yourself into my heart as well." Marcus did reach for her then, his large hands gentle on her shoulders. "I am not a refined man. I have spent most of my adult life alone in the wilderness. I do not know poetry or fancy manners." "I do not want poetry or fancy manners," Amelia said, lifting her hand to touch his bearded face. "I want honesty and strength, and someone who understands that work is beautiful. Someone who does not mind thread in my hair." He kissed her then, And it was clumsy at first because Marcus had not kissed anyone in years. But then they found their rhythm, and it felt like the most natural thing in the world. She tasted like mint tea and smelled like wool and sage, and when they finally pulled apart, they were both breathing hard. "Your father is going to shoot me," Marcus said. Amelia laughed. "My father has been giving me pointed looks for the past week, waiting for you to declare your intentions. He may be sick, but he is not blind." Over the next month, Marcus and Amelia fell into a pattern as comfortable as breathing. They worked together during the day, and in the evenings, they would sit on the porch of the small house the Lawsons rented, talking while the New Mexico sky turned purple and gold. William watched them with approval, though he made sure to chaperone appropriately. Marcus told Amelia about his life in the mountains, about the silence that could stretch for days, about tracking animals through snow and sleeping under stars so bright they seemed close enough to touch. He told her about his childhood in Missouri, about parents who had died of cholera when he was 17, about heading west because there was nothing left for him back east. Amelia told him about England, about gray skies and green fields, about her mother's weaving studio where light came through tall windows. She told him about the grief of losing her mother, about the bravery of starting over in a new country, about falling in love with the strange, harsh beauty of New Mexico. "I miss England sometimes," she admitted one evening, "but I think this is home now. There is something about this land that gets into your blood." "I know what you mean," Marcus said. They were sitting close together on the porch bench, his arm around her shoulders. "The first time I saw the mountains, really saw them, I felt like I had been looking for them my whole life without knowing it." "Is that how you felt when you saw me?" she asked, teasing but also serious. He turned to look at her, his blue eyes intense. "Yes, exactly like that." The order for the fort was finally completed in late September. It had taken nearly 2 months, and Amelia was exhausted but proud. The cloth was some of her finest work, the colors rich and even, the patterns tight and beautiful. Marcus had helped her load the bolts onto a wagon, and William, though still weak, had been able to go with them to deliver the order. The payment was generous, enough to keep the Lawson weaving business going through the winter and maybe hire help in the spring. William shook Marcus's hand firmly when they returned home. "You have done more for us than we can repay," the older man said. "You have my gratitude and my respect." "You have given me something more valuable," Marcus replied, glancing at Amelia. "You have given me hope for a different kind of life." That evening, after William had gone to bed early as he usually did now, Marcus and Amelia walked out into the desert beyond town. The moon was nearly full, painting everything silver, and the air was finally cool after the heat of the day. "What will you do now?" Amelia asked. "The order is complete. You have stayed far longer than you planned." "I have been thinking about that," Marcus said. He stopped walking and turned to face her, taking both her hands in his. "I have been thinking about a lot of things. About the mountains and the town, about solitude and companionship, about what kind of future I want." "And what do you want?" Her voice was steady, but he could see the vulnerability in her eyes. "I want you," he said simply. "I want to wake up every morning and see thread in your hair. I want to help you with your weaving and listen to you talk about colors and patterns. I want to build a life here in Lordsburg if you will have me." "But the mountains," Amelia protested. "That is who you are." "No," Marcus said firmly. "I thought it was, but I was wrong. The mountains were where I was hiding from life, from loss, from the possibility of being hurt again. You have shown me that there is beauty in staying, in building something with someone else. I can hunt in the nearby hills. I can guide people who want to explore the wilderness. I can help your father expand his business. There are 1,000 things I can do here, but the only thing that matters is being with you." Tears were running down Amelia's face. "I cannot ask you to give up your life for me. You are not asking, I am offering, freely, gladly." He wiped her tears with his thumbs. "Amelia Lawson, will you marry me? Will you let me spend the rest of my life watching you weave beauty into the world?" "Yes," she whispered. Then, louder, "Yes, Marcus, yes." They were married 6 weeks later in the small church in Lordsburg. Amelia wore a simple dress of cream-colored wool that she had woven herself, with threads of blue and green running through it like rivers through a valley. Marcus got his hair trimmed and his beard shaped, though Amelia made him promise not to cut either too short. William walked his daughter down the aisle, coughing only a little, his eyes bright with tears. The wedding was small. A few townspeople who had come to respect Marcus in his months in Lordsburg, the preacher and his wife, the owner of the general store who had been buying pelts from Marcus for years, and was amazed to see him settling down. But small did not mean lacking in joy. When Marcus and Amelia exchanged vows, their voices were strong and sure, and when they kissed as husband and wife, the love between them was obvious to everyone present. They moved into a small house on the edge of town, close enough to the weaving shed for Amelia to walk to work but far enough for privacy. Marcus used his savings from years of trapping to buy the property and make improvements. He built Amelia a new, larger loom with his own hands, working from her instructions and his own natural skill with wood and tools. It was a wedding gift that made her cry with happiness. The first months of marriage were an adjustment for both of them. Marcus was used to solitude and silence, and sometimes he would grow restless with the noise and closeness of town life. Amelia was used to independence and making her own decisions, and she struggled at first with considering another person in her plans. But they worked through these challenges with patience and love, learning each other's rhythms and needs. Marcus started a business guiding hunters and adventurers into the mountains. His knowledge of the wilderness was extensive, and there were always men willing to pay good money to be led to where the game was plentiful. He would be gone for a few days at a time, and he would return home to Amelia's son weathered and tired but happy. Those first nights back, they would sit together in their small parlor, and he would tell her about what he had seen while she wove, her fingers steady on the loom. "I saw a bear today," he might say. "A big male, probably 400 pounds. He was fishing in a stream, catching trout with his paws. The men I was guiding wanted to shoot him, but I convinced them to just watch. It was more magnificent than any kill could be." And Amelia would weave that into her cloth somehow, a hint of brown in an unexpected place, a pattern that suggested movement and power. She was building a reputation beyond the military contracts now. Women from all over the territory were beginning to commission pieces from her. Word spreading about the weaver in Lordsburg, who could put your story into cloth. William's health gradually improved once he stopped working with the dyes directly. He taught Marcus the business side of weaving, the contracts and negotiations, and Marcus discovered he had a head for numbers and dealing. Together, they expanded the business, hiring 2 local women to help with the simpler pieces while Amelia focused on the custom, complex work that brought in higher prices. 2 years into their marriage, Amelia discovered she was pregnant. She told Marcus one evening in spring, when the desert was briefly green from winter rains. They were sitting on the porch they had built together, watching the sunset paint the sky impossible colors. "I have been weaving something new," she said, her hand on her still flat stomach. "Something I have never woven before." Marcus looked at her, saw the joy and fear mixed on her face, and understood immediately. "A baby," he breathed. "A baby," she confirmed. "Our baby, "Are you happy?" He pulled her into his arms, holding her as carefully as if she were made of glass. Happy does not begin to cover it. Terrified, amazed, grateful. All of those things at once. "I am frightened," Amelia admitted. "My mother died in childbirth with my younger brother. The baby died too. I have been thinking about that since I realized I was pregnant." Marcus pulled back to look at her face. "That will not happen to you. I will not let it happen." "You cannot control everything," she said gently. "No, but I can make sure you have the best care possible. We will bring in a doctor from Santa Fe if we need to. We will do everything right." He touched her face. "You are strong, Amelia, stronger than you know. You crossed an ocean to a new land. You built a business. You tamed a wild mountain man." She laughed through her tears. "I did not tame you. I just gave you a reason to come down from the hills." The pregnancy was difficult at times. Amelia was sick for the first few months, barely able to keep food down, and Marcus worried constantly. He cut back on his guiding trips, staying close to home. He hired another woman to help full-time in the weaving shed so Amelia could rest more. William fussed over his daughter like she was made of spun sugar, constantly bringing her tea and blankets. But as the months passed and Amelia's belly grew round, her health stabilized. She bloomed with pregnancy, her skin glowing, her hair thick and lustrous. She continued to weave, though she worked fewer hours, and the pieces she created during this time had a special quality to them, as if the life growing inside her infused the cloth with extra vitality. Marcus found himself fascinated by the changes in her body. He would lie with his head on her stomach, feeling the baby kick, marveling at the miracle of it. "That is our child," he would say, wonder in his voice. "Our child, Amelia." "What should we name it?" she asked one evening. "I like simple names, strong names. If it is a boy, maybe Matthew. If it is a girl, maybe Rose." "Rose Harding," Amelia said, testing it. "That sounds like someone who could survive anything." "Or Matthew Harding. Either way, they will be loved beyond measure." The baby came in early December of 1881, after a labor that lasted through the night and into the next afternoon. Marcus stayed with Amelia the whole time, holding her hand, wiping her face with cool cloths, murmuring encouragement even when she screamed at him to be quiet. The doctor they had brought in from Silver City was competent and calm, and the midwife assisting him had delivered half the babies in Lordsburg. When the baby finally came, announcing its arrival with a loud, healthy cry, the relief in the room was palpable. "A boy," the doctor said, placing the squirming, red infant on Amelia's chest. "A big, healthy boy." Amelia burst into tears, holding her son close. Marcus knelt beside the bed, his own face wet with tears, touching the baby's tiny hand with one large finger. The infant's hand wrapped around Marcus's finger with surprising strength. "Hello, Matthew," Marcus whispered. "Hello, son." The first months of parenthood were exhausting and wonderful. Matthew was a good baby, healthy and strong, but he still needed constant care. Marcus discovered reserves of patience he had not known he possessed. He would walk the floor with his son at 3 in the morning, singing old trapping songs in his rough voice, while Amelia tried to snatch a few hours of sleep. William was a doting grandfather, constantly making toys for Matthew or just sitting and watching him sleep. "He has your eyes, Amelia," he would say, "and Marcus's strength. He will be a good man." As Matthew grew from infant to toddler, Marcus found himself thinking about the kind of life he wanted to give his son. He wanted Matthew to know the mountains, to understand the wildness that had shaped his father, but he also wanted him to have roots, community, the kind of stable home Marcus himself had lost too young. Amelia went back to weaving when Matthew was 6 months old, though at a reduced pace. She would set up the baby's cradle near her loom and work, while he slept or played with the bright spools of thread that fascinated him. Sometimes Marcus would come home from a guiding trip to find thread in both their hair, mother and son tangled up in Amelia's work, and he would laugh at the sight of them. "She is the weaver's girl with thread in her hair," Marcus would say, kneeling down to untangle Matthew first. "And now you are a weaver's boy with thread in your hair too. And you are the mountain man who comes down from the hills because we weave beauty into your life," Amelia would respond, smiling at him with such love that it took his breath away every time. When Matthew was 2 years old, Amelia discovered she was pregnant again. This time she was less frightened, her first successful pregnancy and birth having given her confidence. The second pregnancy was easier than the first, and in the summer of 1884 she gave birth to a daughter they named Rose, just as they had discussed years before. Rose was different from Matthew. Where he had been calm and observant, she was active and demanding. She had dark hair like her father and honey-colored eyes like her mother, and from the start, it was clear she had inherited both parents' strong will. Marcus adored her instantly, this tiny, fierce creature who screamed until she got what she wanted and smiled like sunshine when she was happy. Life settled into a beautiful rhythm. Marcus's guiding business was thriving, and he had hired a younger man to help, allowing him to be home more often. Amelia's weaving had become famous throughout the territory. She now had commissions backed up for months, and the pieces she created were treasured by their owners. William had recovered enough health to manage the business side entirely, giving Amelia more time for her art and her children. The house they lived in had been expanded twice, growing to accommodate their family. Marcus had built most of the additions himself, his skill with his hands extending from traps and wilderness survival to carpentry and construction. The property now included a large weaving shed, a stable for their horses, and a garden where Amelia grew vegetables and herbs for dyes. Matthew grew into a bright, curious boy who loved both his mother's stories and his father's wilderness knowledge. By the time he was 5, Marcus was taking him on short trips into the nearby hills, teaching him to track animals and identify plants. The boy took to it naturally, his young eyes sharp and his mind quick. Rose, at 3 years old, was already showing an interest in her mother's loom. She would sit on Amelia's lap for hours, watching the shuttle fly back and forth, her small hands trying to copy the movements. "She will be a weaver," Amelia told Marcus. "I can see it in her already." "And Matthew will be a mountain man like his father," Marcus said, but he said it with affection, not certainty. "Or maybe he will be something entirely his own. That is fine too." They had been married for 8 years when William Lawson died peacefully in his sleep one night in late autumn. It was 1886, and he had lived to see his grandchildren grow and his daughter thrive. His last words to Marcus, spoken that afternoon, were, "Take care of my girl, take care of them all." "Always," Marcus had promised. "You have my word." The grief of losing William hit Amelia hard. He had been her anchor through so much change, the one constant from her old life in England. Marcus held her through the tears, let her talk about her father for hours, and handled all the arrangements while she mourned. Matthew and Rose, too young to fully understand death, knew something was wrong and stayed close to their mother, offering the simple comfort of their presence. After the funeral, Amelia threw herself back into her weaving with an intensity that worried Marcus at first. But he came to understand that this was how she processed her grief, by creating beauty, by weaving her father's memory into cloth that would outlast them all. She made a large piece, the most complex she had ever attempted, that told the story of William Lawson's life. A weaving studio in England, a ship crossing the ocean, the desert of New Mexico, and throughout it all, threads of silver representing his skill and his love. When it was finished, she hung it in their parlor where it caught the afternoon light. "This is my inheritance," she told Marcus and the children. "Not just his skill, but his courage, his willingness to start over, his love of beauty. And we will honor it," Marcus said, "by living fully and loving completely. That is what he wanted for you." As the years passed, the Harding family became a beloved fixture in Lordsburg. Marcus's guiding business had expanded to include a small trading post, and he employed several local men. Amelia's weaving studio now had 3 full-time assistants, and her custom pieces were collected by wealthy families across the Southwest. They were not rich, but they were comfortable, and more importantly, they were happy. Matthew grew into a lanky teenager with his father's height and his mother's intelligence. At 16, he announced he wanted to study surveying and map-making, fascinated by the idea of charting the wild places his father knew so well. Marcus was surprised but supportive, recognizing that his son was forging his own path while still honoring his roots. Rose, at 14, was indeed becoming a weaver. She had her mother's gift for color and had already started creating her own pieces, bold and modern where Amelia's were traditional and careful. Mother and daughter would sometimes argue about technique, but always with love and respect underlying the disagreements. In 1892, Marcus and Amelia celebrated their 15th wedding anniversary. They left the children with a trusted neighbor and rode out into the mountains together, something they had not done in years. Marcus led her to a high meadow he had found decades ago, when he was still living alone in the wilderness. "This is where I used to come when I needed to think," he told her as they sat together on a flat rock, looking out over the vast landscape. "I came here the day after I met you, actually. I sat here and tried to convince myself to leave Lordsburg, to forget about the weaver's girl with thread in her hair." "But you did not leave," Amelia said, taking his hand. "No, I did not. And sitting here now with you beside me, I cannot imagine what my life would have been like if I had. Empty, cold, just existing instead of living." Amelia leaned her head on his shoulder. They were both older now, Marcus's dark hair shot through with silver, Amelia's face lined with the years of laughter and tears. But the love between them had only deepened with time, maturing like fine wood or aged wine. "I used to think my life would be small," Amelia said softly. "That I would weave in Lordsburg until I died, creating useful things but never great things, never truly important things. But you showed me I was wrong. The beautiful things, the important things, are not just in the cloth I weave. They are in the life we have built together, the family we have made, the love we share." "You weave beauty into everything you touch," Marcus said. "Into cloth, yes, but also into our home, our children, my life. You took a lonely mountain man and wove him into something better, into a husband, a father, a man who belongs somewhere." They sat together as the sun moved across the sky, talking about their life, their children's futures, their own dreams for the years ahead. When they finally rode back down to Lordsburg as the stars were coming out, they were both at peace, secure in what they had built together, and excited for what was still to come. Matthew left for college in Santa Fe when he was 18, studying engineering and surveying as he had planned. It was hard for Amelia to let him go, but Marcus reminded her that they had raised him to be independent and brave. "He will come back," Marcus assured her. "This land is in his blood, just like it is in ours." And Matthew did come back, 3 years later, with a degree and a pretty young wife he had met at school. They settled in Silver City, where Matthew started his own surveying business, but they visited Lordsburg often, and the connection between parents and son remained strong. Rose stayed in Lordsburg, taking over more and more of the weaving business as Amelia gradually stepped back. At 20, she married a young rancher from a nearby property, a steady man who loved her fierce spirit and respected her work. She continued to weave even after marriage, and eventually, she and her husband built a house on the Harding property, keeping the family close. Marcus and Amelia grew older together gracefully. By the time they were in their 50s, Marcus's dark hair had gone completely silver, though he was still strong and muscular from his active life. Amelia's hands were gnarled from decades at the loom, but they were still steady, still able to create beauty from thread and yarn. They had 5 grandchildren by the time they reached their 60s. Matthew had 2 sons and a daughter. Rose had 2 daughters. The grandchildren would visit the Lordsburg house often, and Marcus would take them on walks in the desert, teaching them what he had taught their parents about the land and the animals. Amelia would let them help with simple weaving projects, patiently untangling their mistakes, just as Marcus had once untangled thread from her hair. "You remember the day we met?" Amelia asked Marcus one evening. They were sitting on their porch, the same porch where they had courted all those years ago, watching the sunset paint the New Mexico sky in shades of orange and purple. "I remember every detail," Marcus said. "You had blue and red and yellow thread in your hair, and you were cursing in a very unladylike manner." She laughed. "I was frustrated and exhausted and convinced I was going to fail at the fort order. And then this enormous mountain man appeared and offered to help, and I thought he must be mad. Maybe I was. Mad to think I could help with weaving. Mad to think I belonged in a town after so many years alone. But then, maybe the best decisions are a little bit mad." "You said I weaved beauty into your life," Amelia remembered. "Right from the beginning, you still feel that way." Marcus turned to look at her, his blue eyes still sharp despite his age. "More than ever. You have woven beauty into every single day we have had together. Every moment, Amelia, every single one." As they sat together in the cooling evening air, their hands intertwined, they could see the lights of Lordsburg coming on one by one. The town had grown over the years, though it was still small by most standards. But it was their town, the place where they had built their life, raised their children, created something lasting. In their late 60s, they finally retired completely from work. Matthew took over Marcus's guiding and trading business, running it from Silver City with help from local managers. Rose had expanded the weaving studio into a proper factory, though she still did custom pieces herself, and had trained several young weavers in her mother's techniques. Marcus and Amelia spent their retirement traveling, something they had never had time for before. They took the train to San Francisco and saw the ocean. They visited Denver and marveled at the growing city. They went back to Missouri, to the places Marcus had lived as a boy, and he showed Amelia where his parents were buried. But they always returned to Lordsburg, to the house they had built together, to the desert landscape that had witnessed their love story. The mountains were always visible from their porch, and sometimes Marcus would look at them with longing, remembering his years of solitude there. "Do you ever regret it?" Amelia asked once, seeing his expression. "Giving up that life? Never," he said firmly. "Not for a single moment. Those mountains taught me survival, but you taught me how to live. There is a difference." On their 40th wedding anniversary, the whole family gathered in Lordsburg for a celebration. Matthew and Rose had organized everything, inviting friends from across the territory, people whose lives had been touched by Marcus's guidance or Amelia's weaving. The house was full of laughter and noise, children running through the rooms, adults sharing stories and memories. During the party, Rose presented her parents with a gift. It was a large woven piece, but unlike anything Amelia had ever created. It was a collaborative work. Rose had designed it, but dozens of hands had contributed. Every person whose life had been touched by Marcus and Amelia had woven in a single thread, creating a tapestry that represented their impact on the community. Amelia cried when she saw it, touching the threads gently, recognizing the work of her assistants, her children, her grandchildren, people she had taught and helped over the years. Marcus stood beside her, his arm around her waist, his own eyes bright with unshed tears. "This is what you built," Rose said to her parents. "Not just a business or a family, but a community, a web of people who love you and are better because you were here." "I was just a weaver," Amelia protested. "No," Marcus said softly, "you were never just anything. You were always extraordinary." They hung the collaborative piece in the place of honor in their parlor, across from the memorial piece Amelia had made for her father so many years ago. Together, the two weavings told the story of a family, an immigration, a love that had changed everything. As Marcus and Amelia moved into their 70s, they slowed down physically but remained sharp mentally. They spent their days quietly, reading, talking, taking short walks when the weather was good. Marcus's hair was white now, his face lined deeply, but his eyes were still the same blue that had captured Amelia's attention all those years ago. Amelia's hands could no longer work a loom, the arthritis too severe, but she still had thread in her hair sometimes from helping her grandchildren with their projects. The family took turns staying with them, making sure they were never alone for long. Matthew would visit with his grandchildren, now teenagers themselves. Rose came by almost daily, often bringing dinner or just sitting with her parents on the porch. The house was filled with love, even as age took its inevitable toll. One autumn evening, when they were both 76 years old, Marcus and Amelia sat together on their porch as they had done thousands of times before. The sunset was particularly beautiful, the sky alive with color. They were wrapped in a blanket together, Amelia's head on Marcus's shoulder. "I have been thinking," Amelia said softly. "About what? About thread. About weaving. About how a single thread is fragile and easily broken, but when you weave many threads together, they become strong. They become something that lasts." "That is profound," Marcus said, smiling. "I am old. I am allowed to be profound." She lifted her head to look at him. "But it is true, Marcus. Our life together has been like weaving. Every day, every moment, another thread added to the pattern. Some threads are bright and happy, some are dark and difficult. But together they make something beautiful, something strong that will last beyond us. In our children," Marcus said, "and their children, and the people we have helped and taught, and the beauty we have created." She smiled. "I used to think my mother's weavings would be her legacy, but now I understand. The real legacy is not the cloth. It is the love woven into every thread, the care and attention and intention. That is what lasts." They sat in comfortable silence as the stars came out, one by one, as they had done countless nights before. The desert air was cool and sweet with sage. Inside the house, they could hear Rose moving around, preparing dinner. From the stable came the soft sounds of horses settling for the night. "I love you," Marcus said. "I have loved you from that first moment when I saw you with thread in your hair. I will love you until my last breath and beyond." "And I love you," Amelia replied. "My mountain man who came down from the hills and built a life with me. You are the best thread in my tapestry." They lived another 5 years, seeing grandchildren marry and great-grandchildren born. They celebrated their 45th anniversary surrounded by family, their house overflowing with people and love. Marcus was 81, and Amelia had just turned 80 when he died peacefully one spring morning, her hand in his, their children around them. Amelia grieved deeply but with grace. She had known this day would come, had watched Marcus grow frailer over the past year. But she also felt blessed for every single day they had been given together. 47 years, she told her children. 47 years of love and beauty and meaning. How many people can say that? She lived another 2 years after Marcus's death, spending her days with her family, telling stories about her life, about England and immigration and thread in her hair, and a mountain man who had stopped to help. She passed away quietly in her sleep just before her 82nd birthday, and the family knew she had simply decided to go be with Marcus again. They buried her next to him in the Lordsburg Cemetery, on a hill that overlooked the desert and the mountains beyond. The whole town came to the funeral, along with people from all over the territory. At the service, Rose read from her mother's journal, words Amelia had written years before. "I came to this land as a stranger, and it gave me home. I came as a widow's daughter, and it gave me a husband who was my partner in all things. I came as a weaver, and it gave me so much more to weave into my life than I ever dreamed possible. Thread by thread, day by day, I have woven my life together with Marcus's, and what we created was more beautiful than any cloth I ever made. This is my legacy. Love woven so tightly that even death cannot unravel it." After the service, the family gathered at the old house. Matthew and Rose and their children and grandchildren, all of them connected by the love story that had started with thread in hair and a mountain man's gentle fingers untangling it. They stood on the porch together, looking out at the landscape that had witnessed everything. "Tell us the story again," one of the great-grandchildren asked, "about how great-grandpa and great-grandma met." And so they did, passing down the story as it would be passed down for generations to come. The story of a weaver's girl and a mountain man. The story of thread and wilderness, of gentleness and strength, of two people who found each other in an unlikely place and built something that would last far beyond their own lives. The house still stood, maintained by the family as a reminder of their roots. The weaving business continued, now run by Rose's daughter, training new weavers in techniques passed down from Amelia. The guiding business thrived under Matthew's grandson's management, taking people into the same mountains where Marcus had once lived alone. And sometimes, people said, on quiet evenings when the wind was just right, you could almost see them on that old porch. A tall, broad-shouldered man with silver hair and a woman with gentle hands and honey-colored eyes, sitting close together, watching the sunset paint the New Mexico sky. She had thread in her hair, they said, and he was carefully untangling it, the same way he had that very first day. The weaver's girl and the mountain man, forever woven together, their love story written in every thread of the community they had built, the family they had raised, the beauty they had brought into the world. It was a simple story, really, but then the best stories often are. Two people meeting by chance, choosing love and weaving their lives together one day at a time until they created something that would last forever. In Lordsburg, New Mexico, where the desert meets the mountains and the sky stretches wide and infinite, their story lived on. In the cloth woven by their descendants, in the trails guided by their grandson, in the house on the edge of town, where thread still occasionally tangled in children's hair, and gentle hands untangled it with patience and love. She was the weaver's girl with thread in her hair. He was the mountain man who said she wove beauty into his life. And together, they proved that the most beautiful things in life are not found or stumbled upon, but carefully woven, thread by thread, day by day, with love and patience and the courage to build something lasting. Their tapestry was complete, every thread in place, every color exactly right. and it was beautiful.